Again, thank you for joining us today for the Source Water Protection Funding webinar. Again, I'm Julie Floyd, Office of Drinking Water Training Manager, and we have a good program for you today. Our presenters will include Raven Jarvis from the Office of Drinking Water Source Water Protection Program. She's our lead. We have Source Water Protection Specialist Ashley Rubel from CHA and Corey Edwards from Tetra Tech. Scott McNally will be joining us from the Virginia Rural Water Association. Kathy Hawes is joining us from the Southeastern Partnership for Forests and Water, and Danny Davis from the town of Middleburg. We will have a number of folks also joining us for Q&A at the end, and I'll let them introduce themselves when we get there. But if you have questions, please put those in the chat. We have a number of people here on this webinar, so we'd like to handle most of our questions that come up during the presentations. If you have a question about content specific on a slide, go ahead and throw that in the chat. Raven and I will be watching that and responding as able. Please mute your microphones. And if you do send in a chat, please make sure it sends to everyone so that we'll all be able to see it. Again, this program is being recorded. To zoom in on content, if you can't see it very well, on your screen at the top of the WebEx window, there's a zoom feature that you can use. We will be posting the recording and presentations to the Office of Drinking Water website once that's available in a couple of days. Lastly, contact hours are available for the webinar. We'll base that on how long it actually runs. I'm going to post the link to a form in the chat for you to fill it out if you would like contact hours. So that form will be available and only for a limited amount of time following the webinar so that we can get those processed and out to you. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Raven to kick us off.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Raven Jarvis. I guess I should share the screen first. Okay. So I'll be talking to everyone today about our source water protection program. We are located, well, the Office of Drinking Water is located here in Richmond, Virginia in the central office. So today I'll just be going a little bit over our overall source water protection timeline to help everyone stay on track with different dates that they should be paying attention to. Why source water protection, going to be going over the different roles between the contractor, waterworks, technical division, what is our source water process, what services are available, what other resources are available to you. We will touch on definitions of our strategy in place, what that means, substantial implementation, what that means to you, what that means to us, and why it's important in this process. And then ending it off with some eligibility and some different resources that you can take advantage of. But let's get started. I wanted to put this at the beginning to kind of give everyone an overview of some key dates in our source water protection timeline. So starting off with May, that's our first major date. That's when the source water protection grant applications are usually due. So make sure that you're working on your applications early enough to meet this deadline and secure the funding that you'll need. Around June, that's when you should look out for grant awards. Sometimes the timeline is slightly off, but we try to shoot for June to announce those awards. From July to August, that time frame is time to focus on preparing for the annual survey. That's the survey we send out. I'll touch a little bit more on that a little later in the presentation, but that's usually when we're looking at sending out our annual survey for collecting that data so we can also report that to the EPA. Around August to September, that is our utilities to VDH annual survey deadline. That's where we're finishing up getting in our responses and working on updating that information for next year so we can make sure that we send that out to the right people and making sure that we're getting the data that we need and making sure that we know who's interested in getting some help for the next year's process and starting those source water protection plans. In October, that's when you look out for what we're doing right now, the annual source water protection webinar. And then of course, all year, source water protection plan development. That happens all year long, whether you're starting from scratch, whether you're updating an existing plan, or implementing some specific protection measures. That's going to be an ongoing process that requires your constant attention. So source water protection, I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide, but what I always want to point out is why we're protecting our source water. A big part of that is to prevent costs. I think those are some of the most important ones. Definitely protecting our public health, being transparent, making sure that our local waterworks are putting that confidence, or that the community is seeing the transparency that we have. So it's giving them a little bit more confidence in us in the work that we're doing to protect the source water. And then, of course, reducing your water treatment costs. That not only lowers expenses, but also makes sure that more resources can be allocated to other essential community services. So let's talk a little bit about VDH's role in source water protection. Some of our responsibilities include reporting to EPA, and this is just a list of some of the things that we need to report to EPA and communicate some of the things that we're doing here at VDH. So the first one, mapped source water assessments. We're responsible for conducting mapped source water assessments. It's crucial for identifying the quality and availability of our water sources, and also helping to pinpoint some potential risks in the areas that will need attention. We also provide the EPA with data on the number of public water systems that have completed those assessments. So that's important for understanding how many systems are actively evaluating their water sources. Next one is significant potential sources of contamination. So identifying those sources will allow us to prioritize protection efforts and also mitigate the risks in our drinking water. So those are very important to keep the data on. And then, protection strategies in place. That shows how many systems are taking those proactive measures to safeguard their water sources, and substantial implementation over time, which is why we're all here. We want to make sure we have our plans and we're also implementing. So that helps us just evaluate the effectiveness of our protection efforts and making sure that we are identifying those areas for improvement. So whether you're starting out or you're continuing on, I think the overall question is, how can we get from the assessment step to planning to implementation? So to start off, let's clarify some of the terms that we have and that I'll be saying within the presentation is SWA, SWIP, and SWIP implementation. So SWA are your source water assessments. So that refers to the source water protection plan. And putting those plans into action. So the importance of integration, the source water protection is a distinct part of our ODW source water program, but it's closely tied to our other programs, specifically the assessments. The assessments will lay that groundwork for effective protection. Now the transition from SWAP to SWIP, and how does VDH guide waterworks from the source water process, assessment to developing. So our focus is on encouraging waterworks to recognize the necessity of implementation. I'll probably say this a few times, but this program is completely voluntary. So a lot of our work resides on encouragement and providing incentives so people can participate and make sure that we're putting in place the steps and the guidance that we have to then be able to have our grant programs to be able to assist with the funding that people may need for the projects that they have. And also, despite some of the progress that we've had over the past few years, a lot of community water systems remain a little hesitant to implement their source water protection measures. So that kind of indicates to us that after extensive support from ODW and DEQ, a lot of water systems still don't fully recognize that value of incorporating source water protection into their multi-barrier approach to safe water. So I say all that to say we definitely can work together by improving our numbers and enhancing the safety of our drinking water through our protection plans. Okay, so let's outline some of the source water protection process. Um, I'll go through how you can get started, what it looks like to get started from start to finish, and just what does step one look like. So within our source water protection plan process, your first step is going to be developing a local advisory committee. This could be a diverse mix of stakeholders, community members, local government officials, water system representatives. Typically, it could be composed of about 3 to 5 members who are meeting regularly. While their main focus will be source water protection, an LAC can also serve a broader purpose for your community. An active LAC is crucial for part of your source water protection plan as they ensure your ongoing engagement and oversight. So after you've developed a local advisory committee, you then want to educate that community. After you've developed, you've educated, then you'd want to review the source water assessment plan. So this review is critical as it helps identify your key issues, your challenges that may arise when developing and implementing your source water plan. So we've developed a local advisory committee, we've educated, we've reviewed the assessment plan, identified our key issues. The next step would be to identify and review protection options. So together within our contractors, ODW, and the waterworks, we can explore various strategies, assess their feasibility, and discuss the benefits and drawbacks of each approach that you may have. So after that, then your next step is developing that source water plan. This plan should outline specific actions, responsible parties, timelines, and measurable goals that ensure effective protection of your water source. So just to recap again, you've developed your local advisory committee, you have educated your advisory committee, you've reviewed your sources, identified your key issues, you have identified and reviewed protection options, different approaches. Now you have developed your source water protection plan. Now you've outlined what specific actions you'll be taking. The next step is to develop that implementation plan. And all of these steps build off of each other to, one, give you an idea of what your plans are and what your projects that you want to be working on for the next few years, and help you qualify for the source water protection grant. So after that process, what resources are available to you? So starting off with the direct technical assistance, those are just the employees in the Office of Drinking Water. That's myself, Bob, Julie. You'll hear from the rest of us a little bit later, but we are here to help guide you. We provide updated source water assessments, supply source water plan forms. Those are some standardized templates that can make it easier to create a comprehensive plan. We have source water plan forms that we can provide, public education materials that can help you engage with your residents, local leaders, and foster involvement and support. And then, of course, funding information. ODW can guide you through potential grants and funding programs that can help support your efforts or some of the projects that you are trying to pursue. And what other resources do you have? So in addition to the employees in the Office of Drinking Water, your technical division, we also have our source water protection contractors. So whether you're a small community, or a large population, ODW has a range of support options available to ensure that your water is protected and compliant. So for our systems serving populations under 50,000, we offer source water protection contractors, which you will hear from a little bit later. They can provide direct support in developing and implementing your source water plans. These contractors are here to help you outline clear protection measures, as well as identify potential risks, craft a plan that can be successfully implemented. So they are available to you throughout that process, developing your LLC. Any questions that you have, they're available to you for systems serving populations under 50,000. Now, for the systems that are serving over 50,000, we provide direct technical assistance. So that assistance is geared towards the unique needs of larger waterworks that'll help you implement effective protection strategies and ensure that your system meets all the necessary requirements for compliance and funding eligibility. And in terms of funding support, of course, that's why we're here. We have the Source Water Protection Implementation Grants. These grants are available to help waterworks fund their actual implementation of the protection measures that they've outlined in their plans. That can include anything from monitoring to physical improvement aimed at protecting your water source. And if you need help with those grants, our team also provides grant writing assistance. So we know that the navigating that application process for multiple funding programs can be a little bit challenging. So we're definitely here to assist you in applying for grants, even beyond source water protection, including those available through our other programs. And to any potential applicants, make sure that your grant applications are consistent with your source water protection plans. That's very important. So a little bit information to qualify for this assistance for the source water, or for not for the grant. To qualify for the assistance, funding assistance, your system must meet the following criteria. You must be classified as a community waterworks. You must serve less than 50,000 people and process water directly from a drinking water source. That's for assistance from our contractors. And if you're looking to request a copy of your source water assessment, this map is available on our webpage under the drinking water contact us page, and that'll indicate who your contact is for getting your copy of your source water assessment. Okay, so a little bit deeper dive into the contractors. Once again, these services are available free of charge to the community water systems that serve a population of less than 50,000. So their primary goal is just to help you develop and implement your source water protection plans that are tailored to your specific needs. They'll help you form an LAC. They'll help you develop the source water protection plan, and they will assist with implementing that plan. That includes grant writing, that includes developing public educational programs. So they're just here to ensure that your waterworks has the tools and the resources that it needs. And these are the contact information. This will be available when we send this out. Their information is also on our webpage that you can visit at your leisure. So let's take a moment to talk about the different roles of our contractors. I'll try to get through this quickly. I think my time is slipping. So the role of the source water protection contractor is to facilitate identifying that advisory committee, like we've said already. They'll help guide you in selecting those key holders. They can provide valuable input. They'll participate in the committee meetings. They'll also provide educational and technical support that could include technical guidance on source water risks, maybe regulatory requirements and things like that. They'll also assist the preparation of the source water protection plan. So that's one of their key roles, is to help you prepare that SWIP plan. They'll work closely with you, develop a comprehensible plan outlining some of your measures, and they'll also provide guidance for program implementation. So once your plan is in place, the contractor's role kind of extends to guiding you through the implementation phase. That's going to include offering advice on securing funding, helping you write those grants, and then, of course, executing the protection strategies. On the other hand, the role of the waterworks. So the contractor is going to provide that technical assistance, and it's up to the waterworks to lead that project, making sure that they're securing internal commitment, working in tandem with the contractor, and making sure that the protection plan is tailored to your specific needs. So together, that collaboration between your waterworks and the contractor, it's designed to streamline that process and ensure that your community's water sources are protected efficiently. So some of the things that will entail is participating in the program development meeting, making sure that you're attending, you're contributing, sharing all the information that will help the contractor assist you in any way, assisting with the development, of course, providing any needed available information, input on developing, and of course, implementing the plan and making sure that you prepare early enough, taking those measures, and staying on top of different deadlines. So our strategy in place. So these are our current definitions, and I'll go through these a little quickly. So starting off with strategy in place, just to kind of define all of these terms so we're all on the same page as far as what that means and what it means to you. Starting off with a strategy in place. That's the set of documents that outlines your specific actions your waterworks will take to protect its water source. There's 4 key elements in every SIP, the strategy in place, that it must address. So your SIP must address delineation of a source water assessment area, inventory of major potential sources of contamination, recommended actions to mitigate risks. That could be specific actions to eliminate those risks, and then a contingency plan that kind of outlines how to respond to a contamination event should that occur. So that's strategy in place. Once you have a strategy in place, the next step would be your substantial implementation. There's 3 key requirements for your substantial implementation. Having an active LAC, meeting regularly, playing a key role in your source water protection activities, having a SIP in place, which was that document that addresses those 4 required source water protection elements, and then having adequate implementation of strategy in place recommendations. Having your waterworks take meaningful steps to implement the recommended actions from the strategy in place. That means addressing the most significant risks of your water sources, ensuring the protection measures are not just written down, but actively carried out. And as a reminder, each year we send out that annual survey to kind of track that progress of community waterworks in developing and implementing their source water protection strategies. The surveys that we send out, they help us identify who has a strategy in place, who may need to update their strategy, who's actively implementing their plans, and who also may need additional support to get started. So by you guys completing those surveys, your waterworks can express interest in utilizing our services. That helps us understand who needs that services and who we can reach out to start getting that process done. So that can also help you move closer to qualifying for a grant funding. So that survey is super important. It's a valuable opportunity to ensure that your water sources are protected and your source and your system remains eligible for financial support. So please keep an eye out on these surveys around June, July time and take advantage of that important resource. So to ensure that your source water protection plan remains effective, we recommend conducting a thorough evaluation and revision every 3 years. It's essential that your SWIP reflects that your latest priorities and your risk and that your grant applications remain consistent with your updated plan. So this alignment will increase your chances of securing funding and ensure your protection efforts are current and actionable. I have a couple scenarios. I think my time is just about up, so I am going to go through these to kind of give you guys an example of what substantial implementation looks like and what can qualify you having substantial implementation and certain milestones that can qualify you as an actual milestone in your journey. So let's take a look at scenario 1. It says community wells in the coastal plain may be deemed as having a strategy in place and substantial implementation status when the well is constructed pursuant to the Virginia Waterworks regulations and supporting documentation exists. This type of substantial implementation status does not expire unless there's evidence that well structure or aquifer has been compromised. So what does this mean? It means as long as your well is properly constructed following regulatory guidelines and there's documentation to back this up, your system can qualify for a substantial implementation. This status remains in place indefinitely, as long as there's no evidence of compromise to the well structure or the aquifer itself. So what could compromise this status? If at any point there's evidence that the well structure has been damaged or the aquifer has been compromised, you'd need to reassess and possibly update your protection strategy. So this type of substantial implementation is beneficial because it doesn't expire, ensuring that your system remains in compliance and protected unless physical issues arise with the well or the aquifer. So that's one scenario. The next scenario, let's say your community source doesn't meet the criteria under scenario 1. They also may obtain substantial implementation status when a SIP is developed, or a SIP is updated when it's more than 3 years old, or one SIP recommendation or the protection/contingency measure is executed. So developing a SIP, if your waterwork doesn't not yet have a strategy in place, you can simply develop one. That's enough to achieve substantial implementation status. That's a one-time achievement that applies only when your first SIP is approved. That's marking a major milestone in your protection efforts. Or if you want to update your SIP. If your SIP's more than 3 years old, updating that SIP will also qualify your system for substantial implementation. I will note though, updating your SIP can't be used as a qualifying action for 2 consecutive 3-year intervals. So that kind of ensures real actionable steps are being taken to protect your water source in addition to planning and the updates. And then the last option is to execute your SIP recommendation or protection measures, i.e. using that grant funding to implement those projects that you have in your source water protection plan. So if your strategy in place is already in place, you can qualify by executing one of its recommendations. That means taking direct action to implement a protection or contingency measure outlined in your plan. So this could involve installing monitoring systems, addressing contamination risks, or things like executing other proactive measures. So these pathways kind of provide a flexibility in how you achieve and maintain substantial implementation status. That ensures that even if your system didn't meet the criteria in scenario 1, you can still make progress towards protecting your water source. And the overall source water protection implementation grants. So, these grants are available to community waterworks that meet the following criteria. Your system must utilize either groundwater or surface water sources. You must have a source water protection plan. Your waterworks must have an active local advisory committee working alongside you to protect your water sources. To apply for the grant, you'll need to submit a completed source water protection grant application. That is located on our webpage under technical, I think it's called direct technical assistance and funding. It's under that page, but it's also linked within this PowerPoint. So you can click that and get to the application where that hyperlink is, where it says SWIP grant application. So you'll need to submit a completed SWIP grant application, which will be due, typically it's due the 1st of May each year. I said TBD, more than likely it'll be May, but that information is also posted on and updated on our webpage. So if you're ever questioning when the deadline is, make sure you check out our webpage. It'll be posted there, as well as the grant application and the RFA for that year's grant. Okay, let's finish this off with talking a little bit about the eligibility. So again, funding's available for the community water systems that meet those requirements that I just listed. Who's not eligible? So ineligible applicants include individuals, private for-profit firms, and unincorporated citizen groups. Additionally, municipalities or service authorities that do not operate a groundwater or surface water-based community water system are also ineligible for funding. So to summarize, only those qualified municipalities or service authorities that are actively operating community water systems and have a robust protection plan can apply for funding through the Source Water Protection Grant Program. If you have any questions about the eligibility or the application process, feel free to put that in the chat, and we'll have some more time to discuss that at the end question session. The next few slides are just, they provide additional source water protection funding sources. Let's say you don't qualify for the source water grant program. This has a list of additional options. Not going to go through these, but they're available once we send out this presentation. And you can also contact your Rural Water Association rep to determine what resources may be available. Scott is here and he will be sharing with you a little bit later. So he'll give you a little bit information on other resources that are available to you as well. And that is my presentation. And again, like I said, we'll address some of the questions. Feel free to put them in the chat and we will address them towards the end of the webinar. I think
All right, thank you, Raven. We did have one question come in, but it looks like a really good one, and we're going to hold that one until the end for Q&A. So at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Ashley Rubel from CHA.
Hello, everybody. Let me get my screen shared. Hold on one second. All right, hopefully everybody can see that. So today we're going to talk about how VDH2 contractors can support community waterworks in safeguarding their drinking water sources. I'm Ashley Rubel, and I'm with CHA Consulting, and CHA is one of the 2 contractors hired by VDH to help with the Source Water Protection Program in Virginia. And then following my presentation, Corey Edwards with Tetra Tech will provide some further insight into the resources that are available to community water systems. So we'll go ahead and get started. So this picture keeps being shown, so I apologize if I repeat anything that Raven has already presented, but we'll kind of emphasize everything that's available to you with the contractors. But basically, the contractor assistance for the Source Water Protection Program split between the 2 contractors. There's our CHA team contact information. I'm your primary point of contact, and as a project manager for the program for CHA, and then Sandy Warner can also be reached if I'm not available as well. And our services, like Raven said, are free of charge for community waterworks that serve fewer than 50,000 people and process drinking water. So again, please reach out if you ever have any questions or would like assistance with source water protection. We'd be glad to help you in any way that we can. And if we don't have an answer, we'll get you to the person that does have the answer and get that resources started for you. And our project team, we have people that are experienced professionals who are dedicated to supporting your source water protection efforts. We work closely with the local waterworks to help kind of understand what their unique challenges are, and then come up with tailored solutions to help them the best way that we can. And by utilizing the available contractor services that are available to you, your waterworks can benefit from our approach to source water protection, which includes the technical support, educational resources, and our hands-on assistance in developing and implementing the source water protection plans to make them the most effective that they can be. And I think this might kind of be a repeat slide from Raven, but just to reiterate, the role of what the contractors are. We're here to help facilitate that identification of the local advisory committee, like trying to figure out who those individuals are and who the various stakeholder groups could be in that participation. And then we'll also help be a part of that. Whenever you're having the meetings, we can help set them up and be a part of it actively. And then again, assisting with the preparation of the source water protection plan and providing that implementation guidance. We keep our hands in all of that, and we'll help you through that process. And so that's just a kind of snippet of what we do. And now that we've kind of talked about that, I'm gonna move on to some practical examples. And so in the next slides, we'll kind of talk about specific implementation strategies that we've seen in the past, that maybe will give you some ideas of things that you want to think about doing. So public education is a crucial component of implementing your source water protection plan. We're able to help facilitate and promote public education about source water protection for residents within the source water protection area. We can assist with the actual printing and the distribution of pamphlets and brochures, depending on what the needs are in the source water protection area. It can be various things, but that's just kind of a generalized list of things that you might think about: importance of water protection, the nature of surface groundwater recharge, concerns of your local geology, just a generalized list of do's and don'ts, pesticide, fertilizer use. If you know that there's fertilizer being sprayed, pesticides being sprayed near wells, that education component is really important so that everybody who has the potential to impact your water quality has that information, that what their actions do can have consequences on the drinking water quality. And all this information that can be sent out through mailings, or people have put it along with the water bills or posted it on their websites. It's really up to the water systems what their preference is. So the outreach can be targeted to specific groups, such as industries with chemical storage, timber tract owners, homeowners, educating homeowners with septic systems to how to properly maintain that. It's just to name a few. That you can come up with a whole lot of other target groups, but that's just a few that you can think of. But the contractors really are here to help you brainstorm that and open the lines of communication with whatever target groups you're thinking about, and that are relevant to your source water protection area, and really coordinating those efforts with other stakeholders in the community, like such as the local government agencies, environmental organizations, any educational institutions. All this can enhance the effectiveness of these outreach activities. By working together, we can really create a more comprehensive and cohesive approach to source water protection. And something else that we can help with are contingency plans. So a contingency plan is essential for ensuring the safe supply of safe drinking water in the event of a contamination or a physical disruption. And we can review existing plans and then try to identify gaps specifically for contamination events. And by having kind of a comprehensive and well-practiced contingency plan, water systems can really significantly mitigate those risks that are associated with any water supply disruptions, and ensure that the continued provision of safe drinking water is given to the customers. And so some other source water protection measures that may be considered are acquisition of easements, or proposing new ordinances or zoning to restrict land use activities that could contaminate the water sources. Also, the installation of signs can inform the public about boundaries of source water protection areas, and provide guidelines for activities that should be avoided, and even giving numbers that you can call in case of an emergency. And additionally, hiring an employee that could be dedicated to source water protection. I know there's some water systems that have done that in the past, as well as fencing cattle out of waterways, properly abandoning wells. Just some more examples. And the ways to implement a source water protection plan, really, these are just a small snippet of ideas, but there are a number of things that you can do are numerous. And basically, we really want to tailor it when we work with the water systems to what the specific needs are of the community. So that's what our job is as the contractor is, and to help you out in that process. And whatever items that you decide that you want to move forward with for implementing we will help you brainstorm what the funding mechanisms could be as well for implementing those action items. And so that's kind of just a snippet of various source water protection measures. But I wanted to show you a practical example of these strategies in action before I pass over to Corey. But in the next slide, there's a success story that I wanted to talk about from the city of Salem that really showcased the real world impact and benefits of implementing a source water protection plan. And so through the technical assistance from the VDH program, CHA worked with the city of Salem to help develop a source water protection plan for their surface water intake. And to support this plan, the city had created a website to provide residents with the valuable information about source water protection. And the website includes a lot of educational materials, practical tips for safeguarding water sources. Also provides a link to a project that they had started with source water protection. And so what they did that I found really interesting was that they teamed up with the U.S. Geological Survey and secured funding that way to build an upstream monitoring station, which you can see it's in the upper right-hand corner of this slide. But the station, they ended up beginning operation back in early of October 2020, and that was able to relay the real-time water quality monitoring data to water treatment plant staff. And residents can even sign up to receive water quality alerts, which is really a fantastic feature as well, and that's promoted on their websites as well. But the construction of the monitoring station was very, very timely, as you can see, only a few short weeks later from when it began operation, and it began operation in October 2020. But then in October 30th, that month, there was a train derailment that happened upstream of their intake. And so this incident resulted in a coal spill into the river. And thanks to the upstream monitoring station, the city was able to capture data on the impacts of the spill on the water quality. And I think this data was vital for assessing the contamination and implementing the appropriate response measures that the city took to help protect their infrastructure and make sure that they continued to provide safe drinking water to their residents. And the actions taken really demonstrate the importance of being proactive with source water protection. So I just wanted to share that little story with you, and then I'm going to hand it over to Corey Edwards with Tetra Tech, and she's going to provide you a little bit more insight on resources that are available to you for source water protection.
Thank you, Ashley. Hello, everyone. If you've worked with source water protection in the northern part of the state, you've probably spoken to me at some point, and I'm happy to be a part of this great team to provide everyone assistance. I don't want to go over some of the things that we've already seen, but I'll hit a few other things a little bit more in depth. We are available to you, as everyone mentioned. If you serve a community system under 50,000 within this northern portion of the state, myself and Aileen Malloy, who's the project manager, are available and ready to assist you with any needs you may have, especially getting started with your source water protection plan. The way we usually see referrals for our assistance in this program are direct referrals from VDH and ODW. They have done a wonderful job, especially in the last few years, marketing this program. The annual survey request that comes out every year, we do offer a question there asking if you would like assistance. And if you check yes, we follow back up with you. It does sometimes take us a few months to get you in the line of people who do want assistance. And then sometimes direct system outreach, especially from those systems who have already completed a source water protection plan. Source water protection in the state of Virginia is a voluntary program, so the systems have no obligation to participate. So we are very happy for those of you who are active and have chosen to, that you do. The reporting for VDH to EPA is definitely mandatory, but your participation is voluntary, and we just appreciate all of it. Some of the most recent assistance that we've provided to systems are those source water protection plan creation and updates, and that's the most common use of our utilization of our assistance. When we create these plans, the first thing that we will do, as Raven mentioned, is set up your LAC, Local Advisory Committee, and we guide you through that process. So please don't be daunted by any of these processes that you've heard mentioned before. If you reach out and you're eligible for our assistance, we will guide you every step of the way through each piece incrementally. So it's not such a huge undertaking to your system as you might expect it to be. After we create your LAC and we have a meeting, we typically request the source water assessment from ODW. Previously, Raven shared that map with everyone for who your ODW contact is. If you reach out directly to them before you start the process, sometimes it takes them a bit of time to go back through their records and provide that, but they provide a paper version, and then they also provide a mapped GIS version that we can use to update some of your maps in the plan. But we always try to include that source water assessment because it does include your protection zones and your potential sources of contamination. And then we'll typically conduct a windshield survey to either verify that those potential sources of contamination still exist within your Zone 1 protection area, which is different depending on if you have a groundwater or surface water source, obviously. And then we'll also, in that windshield survey, note any other potential sources of contamination that may not be a regulated source and come down to us through that data download from VDH. Things like agriculture or just newer items that maybe your system knows about that you've had issues with in the past. Sometimes those heating oil tanks that are antiquated, that are in folks' backyards, that may not have been updated and could have the potential to leak. Clandestine junkyards that are in the backwoods. And then once we identify those, we can start to build that updated potential contaminant source mapping, and then develop your management and educational strategies based off of those potential sources of contamination and what your action items and management strategies may be for your future. We do look to those potential contaminant sources, but again, this is the voluntary program, and when we build your plan, we like to add things that are feasible for your system to achieve. Sometimes, like for the example of the clandestine dumps, if you have people that like to dump tire piles or things like that, and it's relative to your source, potential to contaminate, there's a Virginia hotline that you can apply for assistance, and we have had systems successfully gain funding through that program rather than just the source water protection program and grant program through VDH. So working through your contaminant source mapping and your educational and management strategies may help you look into additional funding and really make some targeted implementation, which is ultimately what we're all looking forward to doing through this program. And then we do some interagency coordination, like I mentioned, the folks and like Ashley or Raven mentioned, the folks through VDH, they have multiple programs that then VDH can guide you through, Julie included. But then there are additional agencies, and Kathy is one of those. Kathy, who will speak later on, covers some potential funding sources as well from other sources. NRCS is a good source for funding if you're working in the agricultural realm with agricultural producers that may have the potential to contaminate. So we can help facilitate some of that coordination. And then we provide important deadline and opportunity reminders. So if we notice a grant, if we are intimately familiar with your source water protection plan because we've helped you create it, and we know that you are an active system working towards your goals, and you've listed something that may not be eligible for the source water protection grant program through VDH, but might be eligible to another program that we notice on the horizon, a due date, we'll send you that information. And then it's up to you whether or not you want to pursue that opportunity. But we do try to keep everyone on a list so that if we notice anything that might be useful to your system, we send that to you all, as well as the important deadlines and reminders for things like this webinar and the VDH implementation grant program. One case example that I would like to give is the town of Luray. We have worked with them for years. We recently worked on a source water protection update for them. And this is an example of that just very important management strategies that's in your source water protection plan. I call this the crowbar of the plan because this is what really gets you in the doorway to funding through VDH and through any other grant program that you might want to seek funding through. And I use this as an opportunity not only to keep a record of the action items like here that they want to move forward to in the future, but also what is not posted here are their completed items so that if there's any turnover or if you have a new mayor, you have a log of actions that you've taken historically in this list and then when it was completed. And you'll notice here that they're trying to seek grant funding for this backup pump, which may not be eligible for VDH source water funding, but it may be for a different grant program. We've recently submitted to them their updated source water protection plan. And then we also requested implementation funding to mail them directly brochures, educational brochures for their system. And I'll show you an example of that on the next couple slides. But in the future, they hope to apply to the program to determine their recharge areas and time of travel for their groundwater system. So this management strategies list is extremely important because without a project listed here, and you can be much more general than this, but without your project listed here, you cannot apply to the source water protection grant program through VDH for source water. This is an example of some of the information that was included in our brochure to Luray, just general, what is source water, and then, what should we do to protect it, emphasizing that everyone plays a role and what potential contaminant sources could come from. More information on, they actually made all of their public version of the plan. We do two versions, a confidential version for just the system, and then a public version that's appropriate to send out that doesn't have the major contact information for the system and excludes some of the locational maps for your source in there. So we exclude that from the public version, but Luray has made their public version available on their website as well as this brochure. But this was the folding trifold brochure that we applied for and received funding through VDH to develop, print, and mail directly to the system. And then the next slide shows like the interior of it, a nice graphic on watersheds. And so we worked with the system to develop all of these components. It looks different for every system if you choose to develop a brochure as an educational outreach component. And these were the ones very specific to their system that they wanted to, the protection measures that they wanted to include in their brochure. A couple other examples of systems that we've worked with in the past and what they were just instrumental in achieving. New Kent Department of Public Utilities, again, we've worked with them for many years, and I'd have mentioned Middleburg in this list, but because there will be a speaker later to go over theirs, I chose not to include them here. But New Kent did also have educational brochures, and the difference in their development, Luray had a bulk order of about 3,000 shipped directly to their town hall to use at different events and to provide to their customers. But New Kent actually had direct to customer printing. So they provided their customer list, and the brochures actually went out to every customer and showed up in their mail. We assist them regularly with their source water protection plan updates, which VDH recommends every 3 years. Again, voluntary. And definitely update your action items list when that becomes relevant. With private well abandonment and the investigation, a survey, and assistance, they were awarded funding to abandon one of their public wells that was no longer in use. And that's a key component of this source water protection program. Percival, we're actively working with them right now to update, and they have just used that action item list as a checklist. They've accomplished so much. It is just inspirational, really. They were successful in applying for grant funding for well fencing. They're currently working on an asset management plan. And then they took it and ran with it and sought additional funding for agricultural runoff diversion for like a very specific field that was impacting with cattle, that was impacting their intake. They're working on a drought response plan, and they have established a 93-acre nutrient bank, and then also applied to this program for well security monitoring successfully. So those are just some examples of additional assistance that were successfully achieved through the program. And if you have any questions, this is my contact information, but I'm happy to get us all back on track on time.
Thank you, Corey. We're going to move now to Scott McNally. And again, if anybody has additional questions, please put them in the chat. If they're slide specific, we'll answer them at the time, or we'll hold them to the Q&A. So Scott, if you are ready, go ahead and join us.
Hey, can everyone see me?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Hey everyone, so I'm Scott McNally. I work with the Virginia Rural Water Association, and I am the source water protection specialist. Just a little overview of us. All 50 states and Puerto Rico have a rural water association, and we are all overseen by the National Rural Water Association based out of Oklahoma. And so the source water protection partnership we work under, we kind of call it a grassroots source water protection program. And it's a partnership between the United States Department of Agriculture, the Farm Service Agency, and the National Rural Water Association. So we receive funding to the source water protection program from the USDA as part of the Farm Bill, and that gets distributed to state associations throughout the country by the National Rural Water Association. And so this funding comes to all the state associations so we can provide nationwide source water protection services at no cost to the utility. So we also have a lot of other entities at Rural Water, like water circuit riders and wastewater circuit riders, that also provide no cost assistance on everything from water treatment, distribution, wastewater, and sewer. And they are also often critical parts of implementing the source water protection plans in terms of optimizing water treatment and reducing water loss and preventing contamination from aging wastewater infrastructure. So we all kind of work together as a big team on everything at Rural Water. And so in terms of source water protection, I think in Virginia, the Rural Water Source Water Protection Program has been going since about 1990 or 1992, maybe. And we work with everything from systems with 100 connections to a couple thousand connections. as part of our grant from the USDA, we only work with systems that have populations of 10,000 or less for source water protection. So we usually start by establishing a source water protection committee with the system, which typically consists of myself and, maybe one or two water circuit riders, and as well as individual, interested parties who work at the system. And we work together to identify residential, agricultural, commercial, and industrial risks to drinking water quality. And we then work together to determine methods for mitigating risks and identifying ways of educating the public. So, as part of this process, when we're engaging with a system on a source water protection plan, the water and wastewater circuit riders will typically come in as well to do what they do, and help that system, kind of help bolster the integrity of the system in terms of, water conservation activities to reduce water loss, and smoke testing for sewer lines, and just optimizing water and wastewater treatment, because we also assist with setting with rate setting as well. So we just kind of find that systems that are in a more resilient and financially viable place, they're often more open and proactive to pursuing, like Corey just said, our voluntary source water protection activities. So yeah, there's a lot we can do for systems, and I'm not going to get too into the nitty gritty of source water protection, because Ashley, Corey, and Raven just covered all that. But yeah, just want all the systems in attendance here to know that Rural Water is here. All of our services are cost free, and we can provide assistance for anything on source water protection, water treatment, wastewater, and also we have an abundance of training resources on everything as well. So I think that's pretty much what I have to say to everybody, and I can post my email and contact information in the chat as well. So feel free to reach out to us anytime. And yeah, you can also go to our website at virginiaruralwaterassociation.org.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott. Up next, we have Kathy Hawes from the Southeastern Partnership. So Kathy, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Julie. Hi, everybody. I am the coordinator for the Southeastern Partnership for Forests and Water, and I'm going to share this with you. There we go. Patrick, I'm going to hide this little message down here that says to stop sharing, but you may have to tell me how to get out of this once I hide that. Okay, this is a different way of looking at source water protection. May not be exactly what you're used to, but what we do at this Partnership for Forests and Water is look at what the forests are doing, healthy managed forests are doing to benefit source water, and quite a bit that these forests are doing in your watershed. They're regulating the precipitation that comes and avoiding a lot of the runoff that includes a lot of those agricultural pollutants. It manages the stormwater so that we have less flooding, reduces erosion, your nitrogen and phosphorus that are going into your water supply, and filtering even more pollutants than just the nutrients. And it helps recharge the aquifers so that, if you've got groundwater sources instead of surface water sources, they're working to benefit you as well. This is a quick shocking slide to show you in two areas, one an urban area and a forested area. The black lines down there show you how much precipitation is taken over about a 1.5 year long period, and it's roughly the same amount of precipitation, but up at the top, the red line is how much of that precipitation is managed by those forests. And so if you think about all those impacts that I just was talking about, nutrients, sediment, the erosion, flooding, the forested areas really help manage all of that. So you want to look at your watershed and look at source water protection in terms of how much of your watershed is forested and which are those forests that you really want to protect, and make sure that they're not turned into a development and causing you great impacts in terms of water treatment costs and things. This slide shows you some research that was done across the Southeast. Every one of those blue dots represents a source water intake. And then what they did is look at how much of this is only surface water on this one. Look upstream and see how much of that area was forested. And as you increase the percentage of forested area upstream, you can see nitrogen and phosphorus and sediment, significant decreases in all three of those. And then this one here is specifically relatable to you guys. This is treatment and chemical costs based on that percentage of forested watershed that's upstream of those intakes. And it has a significant impact on how much you're paying to treat those treat that water. And then it stops at 60% because that 60% line is kind of where you start to see diminished returns on investment. And the benefits level off around there. So in your mind, you can think of that 60% number as a danger zone, a point at which you don't want to dip below that. So you can look at your watershed and you can talk to the Forest Service, you can talk to other groups, and they'll tell you how much of your watershed is forested and which of those forests are going to have the greatest impact on your drinking water sources. So what this partnership tries to do is look at where source water protection is a goal of every one of these different state agencies, conservation groups, those dedicated to forestry, those dedicated to land conservation, and those dedicated to water quality. They all can meet in the middle, and there's a lot of practices that will benefit source water protection, managing those forests, prescribed burns, and conservation easements to protect areas from development, riparian buffers that are going to stabilize your stream banks and provide that buffer of filtration before it enters your drinking water. There's lots of groups out there that are dedicated to water quality, but this one is specific to forests and even more specifically to those forest landowners. In the Southeast, especially in Virginia, a lot of that land, the forested lands are privately owned. So we're going to want to develop a relationship with those landowners and help educate them. Those are some of your ratepayers. Help educate them on what they can do to help protect their forests, to keep those riparian buffers. And you want to understand your watershed. So like I said, that's a key question. What percentage of your watershed is forested? If you're in good shape, you're up there at 80 or 90%, that's really great. What can you do to help keep it that way? And then if you're starting to dip below 60%, then you need to start taking some drastic proactive measures to get that number up. You want to keep those forests as forests with little to no development on those key parcels, and then keep those parcels managed and conserved through forest management plans, prescribed burns, conservation easements, things like that. Excuse me. So what we do is bring people together to start talking about this. What can they do together? We heard the Rural Water Association talking about a source water protection committee that'll help you develop. The Office of Drinking Water is talking about the advisory team, I think they call it. So these collaborations are really important. There's a lot of people that have data that you're going to want access to, but there's a lot of people that are going to want access to your data and your needs as well, because you've got this relationship with all of these raters that you can help educate on the importance of protecting this land. And so land conservation groups, land trusts, they can work with you to help communicate to those forest landowners. So there's so many ways that you can work together. And we try to have these meetings in person or virtual meetings where we can talk about where our goals overlap and how we can work together. Excuse me, my voice is going. I've been sick recently. This is what a typical agenda to one of these looks like. I'm gonna breeze through this, but we put these up in different states. We're about to have one in the state of Tennessee. We just had to cancel one in Florida because of a hurricane, but different states are doing this now on an annual or semi-annual basis. Texas, Georgia, and what we've done in Virginia is put together some partners, and we have regular calls once every couple of where we talk about these issues. And so eventually this could turn into a statewide partnership like we have in these 5 states that you see here. But for now, it's just bi-monthly meetings, an hour long, where we talk about some of these possible funding sources, any new research that has come out, new sources of information for you guys to be able to work on source water protection from this perspective of protecting forests. So the source water protection as a whole, you guys have a good understanding of that. And then what a lot of these groups are trying to do is really connect with you as utilities. Your downstream water consumers can provide funding for upstream forest protection. And that is a great loop if we can get that going. So let's say that one of your utilities charged a 50-cent or a $1 fee for a watershed protection fee. And then that money was given to a land trust that uses data from a local university to figure out which of these forest parcels are most key to protecting your source water at your intakes. And everybody working together, we can come up with some sustainable revenue sources. The resources that you guys have with the private contractors and with the Office of Drinking Water, it's astounding. It's better than a lot of the states that I've seen, if not all of the ones that I'm familiar with. And so you guys have so many resources at your disposal. But when I look at the Southeast and the area that I'm looking at, and then I try to promote these partnerships at a state level where all of the agencies have this boundary and everybody's working together within that. But the real shut in the ground happen at the watershed level. And that's where you guys come into play, because you're working in a particular watershed. So if you look at and analyze and understand your watershed beyond just a contamination zone, I don't know the terminology you guys have, but you have a main contamination zone and then you work out from there, maybe in concentric circles, or maybe it's a little more advanced where you know where the water is flowing. But if you expand even further into your entire watershed, who are the other utilities that you can partner with? Who are the land trusts, the conservation groups that you can talk to and work with to really have a more comprehensive plan for all of the lands that impact your drinking water? And the way that you can look at it is, this is one way of looking at it, but there's lots of different ones. Analyzing the lands around your intakes in terms of slope, proximity to the streams, especially proximity to your intakes. Is the land in a 100-year floodplain? Is what types of soil do you have there? Is it developed or not? What level of development? And so you can get with a university or a group and have this analysis done of your entire watershed. And maybe it's already done and you just have to look at it and figure out which of those parcels are most important to you, utility with your intakes, and then work from that point. And then try to bring everybody together. And you have the resources, you have the people that are going to help you set up these meetings and talk to these other players. Your ag extension, they can write watershed plans for you. The Division of Forestry can help you with that analysis. NRCS, as Corey mentioned, they can work with the landowners and provide actual funding for cost share funding for forested riparian buffers. Conservation groups can do tree plantings and stream stabilization projects. And then you've got your environmental quality agency, separate from your Department of Health. They're interested in water quality on the whole. They're going to have sources of funding and resources for you to be able to work on this. So I've got a few examples here. Try to stay a little bit on track here on time. The Savannah River Clean Water Fund, this is what they looked at their watershed, identified the priority forests within those watersheds. They took it down to the priority parcels within those forests, and then who owns those parcels, and then did an outreach campaign specifically to those landowners to try to get things done like conservation easements and forest management and stewardship plans. Sebago Clean Waters, this is the city of Portland up in Maine, and they looked at, you guys will appreciate this, they're one of, I think, 50 drinking water utilities that have a filtration exemption from the EPA, and they wanted to keep it that way. They have very pure water up there, and so they established these goals for how much of their watershed they needed to permanently conserve under an easement, and how much of their watershed how much of the forest they need to have actively managed and stay healthy in order to keep that filtration. So they've raised over $10 million just since 2017. They have all kinds of partners involved in that. And then it's all managed by this one water utility that applies for grants and funding and things to accomplish those. Catawba Watery over in North Carolina. This is a bunch of utilities that come together, and the utilities pay dues to join this group, and then those dues are used for much of the research that they do and a lot of the on-the-ground projects like land acquisitions and easements. Raleigh is another one. They do 40 cents per meter per month, the city of Raleigh, and then what they do is distribute those funds to one of 6 land trusts that then they submit proposals and say, we want to work on this stream bank, or we want to try to acquire this piece of land, and that the city of Raleigh evaluates to see which is going to most benefit their drinking water protection plan, and they fund those projects. And then one last example, Central Arkansas Water. They started out at 45 cents per meter per month, and they've doubled that. They're generating $2 million a year, and they actually have a prescribed burn team on staff. So this is it's a big utility, and they've got a lot of staff there, but they're generating the revenue that's helping them pay for this. And they do a variety of forest management and conservation easement programs. Whoops. There we go. So one aspect of your source water protection plan, sure, you have your sources of contaminants that you want to identify, your CAFOs, your chemical treatment, chemical manufacturers, those, the coal, if you tracks, and you've got coal trains along those, like she gave an example of when one of those wrecked, and you've got some pollution from that. Well, also, does your source water protection plan look at land use within your watershed? Are you able to look at, as a potential threat, forest loss? Or if there's a key forest that's helping filter your source water, it's going to have a big impact. Is that going to go up and turn into a huge development at some point? So think of forest loss or conversion as one of those threats to your drinking water, and then try to be proactive in planning for that and involving people to just at least start the conversation about it. And then what we've done in Florida and Texas, and we're working with this Office of Drinking Water in Virginia, is adding a page, a template, a boilerplate page to source water protection plans that help educate utilities on the importance, this connection between forests and drinking water sources, and then offer recommendations, give you some things that you can act on, like starting a dialogue with your local land trust, and be ready when a particular parcel happens to go up for sale. Then you can rally the troops behind trying to acquire that land or put a conservation easement on it. And then those land trusts and things are interested in you as well, because you've got access to funding sources that they don't, such as state revolving funds and these the Office of Drinking Water, Source Water Protection grants that we've been talking about all this time to implement some of these protection programs. And there's lots of resources. I'm going to put my name and contact information. If you would like a presentation that's a little more in depth for just your utility, if you want to get some of your staff members together to be educated a little more about this, you want anything from me at all, please reach out, and I'm happy to work with you and with the contractors in the Office of Drinking Water to put more to educate you more on this. And then this is one other resource, sourcewatercollaborative.org. They've got a lot of resources that can help you understand more about ways of protecting your source water. So I wanted to throw that one in. And that's all I've got. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy. That was super interesting. Really
Good.
appreciate that presentation.
And my
We're gonna-
screen's not still on, is it?
No, I'm seeing just you.
Okay, good.
We're going to turn now to Danny Davis, the town manager of the town of Middleburg.
All right, I am working my way to try to share my screen. And Julie, you probably can't see it yet, can you?
I am seeing a white background.
Oh, white background. That's exciting.
You have multiple
is.
monitors. You might need to change your monitor.
I will do that real quick. My apologies. It's multiple monitors. That's fantastic. Sorry about that, guys. I had an event this morning, so couldn't get this squared away ahead of time. Let me stop the sharing and try that one more time. While I'm doing that, I am with the town of Middleburg, and nice to be here with you all, and I appreciate all the help from VDH and Office of Drinking Water and all the grants that they have supported us with in the past. All right. Any better or not?
I am still just seeing a white screen.
Heck on it all. Let me see this.
When you share, you may have to click entire screen. That's a problem I was having too.
Okay. Instead of I see. Let me put this back up here. And I'll do screen 2.
Now I'm seeing
Now you're
sunset.
seeing my background. I never know which screen is which when you mercy sakes. Let's go to screen. Oh, I see screen 2. Here we go. It's working its way. Well, I apologize. This is
Well,
not the way I
Let
like
me
to.
know if you want me to.
Yeah, if you want to do that, Julie,
Sure.
that might just make life easier. Sorry about that.
And let me put it in presenter mode. I've got too many windows. How does
Perfect.
that look?
Awesome. That is great. Wonderful. And you can go on and jump onto the next slide. So thank you for letting me share. And I apologize I couldn't be here for the earlier part of the presentation. My name is Danny Davis. I'm the town manager here in Middleburg. I've been here about 6 years. And when I first started in 2018, about a month later, the town council adopted this thing called the Source Water Protection Plan. And I was like, I guess I probably ought to read this document. It sounds pretty important. And so what I found is that we had back in 2008 developed our first source water protection plan. And then we had gone through a few updates and overhauls to that plan. I know you heard from Tetra Tech earlier, and they've just been a great partner in this, and of course, with the support and the grants from VDH and Office of Drinking Water. So in December of 2018, we developed our latest source water protection plan. And what it does is obviously it defines areas that we need to try to protect, but also then identifies recommended actions and goals to really help protect our water. So Middleburg is a town, we are 1 square mile. We are about 700 residents. So compared to many other jurisdictions, we are extremely small. However, we also have a 5-star resort in our town and a very thriving tourism industry. That one property owner, one business, if you will, accounts for about half of our water consumption every day. We produce somewhere around 100,000 to 120,000 gallons per day. We have 5 wells that serve our town. So all of our water comes from groundwater. So it's really important for us to make sure that we are doing everything possible to protect our source water. So as noted, we have our current plan adopted in 2018, guides our implementation. And then through that, we're able to use that to apply for continuing grants from VDH. We've used it for DEQ, other local funding as we go through the CIP with our elected officials. And then as necessary, if we used ARPA funds or other things like that. You'll see on the screen here just a couple pictures. I have a few more that we'll go through some examples, but being able to do some projects that are really impactful for source water. The brochure at the bottom was one of the first things our town did, and that was simply educating the public. What is source water protection? Why is it important that we make sure that gas does not leak into the ground, that we capture rainwater and use rain barrels, and how we protect our not only the quality of our water, but the supply as well. Okay, you can jump to the next screen. I wanted to walk through a few examples just to talk through what we've done in my 6 years here with the town and what we're continuing to do with some of these grants and how they've really been effective. So one of the things we did immediately was to protect our wellheads actually just by fencing. It's amazing when you find that your wells are kind of wide open and anyone could just walk right up to it and potentially cause harm. So we used a grant to fence our well sites that were not already protected. And while that seems very basic, it's also very helpful. And so any dollars we can get to support that was great. We then went through a project to look at all the other wells in the town that might have been drilled at some point, who knows how long ago, and whether we could close those wells that are on private property. So not public wells, but private wells that may have been used decades ago or no longer being used, or encourage them to no longer use them, because we know that any opening into the aquifer could potentially be a source of contamination in our drinking water. It was an interesting project, only really found one well that we could close, but it gave us insight into a number of the different private wells in the town. We then went through a project to identify where our wells are pulling water from and hopefully understand how they recharge from the groundwater. This was probably more of a kind of very 30,000 foot high level look at this issue. There's a lot more detail that we probably could get into from a hydrogeological standpoint, but at least from an overarching standpoint, understanding where our water comes from, where it recharges, because that helps us understand the impacts of neighboring development, other uses of water, farms, breweries, areas that use an extreme amount of water, and whether we're having an impact on each other, whether when we draw down water, is it affecting them or vice versa. That was a great study, especially important because we had a number of developments happening outside of our jurisdictional limits, but it gives us an idea of where it may affect us into the future. All right, next slide. A couple other, these are some of our more recent projects that are really pretty cool. The septic conversion project, one of our key goals of our source water protection plan was getting rid of any septic systems still in the town limits. And what we found is we had 5 properties still on septic, and most of these properties The oldest, I think, was built in 1966, and as far as we could tell, had never been replaced. And so when you've got a 60-year-old septic system, you know it's prone to failure and likely going to fail soon. And then the newest ones were maybe 40 years old, but still we were concerned about that. So, of course, in an effort to protect our drinking water, we want to eliminate any contamination sources. So we worked with these property owners to convert them from septic system to our sanitary sewer system. All of them required grinder pumps because of gravity issues. And we also developed a mini force main on one of the roads. Two of the properties adjacent had already put in their own grinder pumps, but were being served by private laterals that were probably 400 to 500 feet long. And of course, 40-year-old galvanized pipe is prone to breaking as well. So we would prefer those mains to be controlled by the town and a better quality. So that was a great project. We used DEQ funding, we used VDH funding, and we used local funding to bring that together. And it was a great project and very successful. And I think the property owners are all very grateful, because if they had a failure and if they had to replace it themselves, it could have been $40,000 or $50,000. And most of these property owners are fixed income retirees that would not have been able to manage that directly. The next project was looking at our wells and doing video inspections. And then also, really what's important with wells is understanding what the drawdown is, how we're impacting the water levels as we draw them down, especially if you all were like us, we experienced a pretty significant drought this year. So understanding when we draw down and pump for 5 hours or so at a well site, does it recover quickly? Or does it take a few days to recover? And what is the impact? So being able to actually get data loggers, transducers in these wells, and then track that information is crucial to our long-term water supply. And so a grant helped paid for that. And then we'll also do video inspections of those wells to identify if they need some rehabilitation. One that we got approved for this current year and just issued a contract for is doing video inspections of our sewer mains. And you might think, well, why are you doing sewer inspections as part of a wellhead source water protection grant? Well, we had a situation where a sewer main collapsed in itself. And while it was mostly contained, it could have been leaking into the ground. And our concern, again, is when our sewer infrastructure fails, then it's risking groundwater, and that gets potentially into our drinking water. And so we don't want to face a situation where we have bacteriological contaminants getting into our wells. So our current grant for this year is to do a significant amount of video inspections of our sewer pipes and understand where our biggest challenges are, and then how we can put together a plan to repair those and protect our groundwater. Looking into the future, we have other projects that we're going to apply for year after year, looking at how we enhance our wells. Maybe we need to do some rehabilitation. Maybe we need to do some additional looking at how we enhance the water production, the gallons per minute from our wells. Looking at long-term water supply, do we need to look at potentially even drilling new wells? Or if we have one that is not recharging as quickly as we'd like, why and how do we repair that? And then other ways that we can reduce our potential sources of contamination across the town. So whether it's continuing to work with people that have propane tanks, additional wells that might be used for irrigation, other ways that we just protect our drinking water. So those are my examples. I will say that, again, it's been wonderful working with VDH and ODW in this project, and every year as we apply for grants and as we go through it, being able just to understand that we have identified priorities in our source water protection plan, and then we can look at implementing those year after year. Our town council is incredibly supportive of this effort and being able to have a list that we work off of. And then we do have, as I think noted previously by other presenters, we do have a source water protection team, and it meets with our utility committee, which is a staff committee. But this team reviews our source water, our water levels, our wells, and things like that to make sure that we're implementing the source water protection plan as best we can, and then gives us guidance on what projects to pursue year after year in the budget and through grant funding. So they're a great team and provide us a lot of support through that. So anyway, that's kind of my presentation from the town of Middleburg. We just say thank you for all their assistance. And if anyone has questions about how we do this, obviously, I think you've probably received a high level look, get a source water protection plan in place. It really is helpful. And then that can guide future projects. If you want to talk further, you're welcome to reach out to me. middleburgva.gov. All of our information is there, or we can connect through Raven or Julie. They can give you my info, and happy to take any questions now or in the future. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Danny. At this point, we do have a couple of questions, and we are going to transition to the Q&A session. So Raven, I will pass that over to you to moderate.
Sounds good. So we're open for questions now. It'll be myself, Bob, Corey, Sandy, and Barry is on the line. If Bob or Barry, if you guys want to introduce yourselves, you can do so at this time, and we'll get ready to answer some questions.
Yes, this is Barry Matthews. I'm the Director of Training, Capacity Development, and Outreach. I manage the budgets for the Source Water Protection Program.
And I'm Bob Edelman. I'm the Director of the Division of Technical Services. And Raven is part of my team. And I'm most likely to be on the team that reviews the applications for the grant applications.
Great. All right. So I'm looking here in the chat. Town of Montrose, I see that Corey has sent you an email. So we're going to go down to the next question. I see Tyler Patrick. It says, if a water/sewer authority runs multiple small systems ranging from 100 to 10,000 service population, would they qualify for source water protection contractor assistance? What if combined population of all managed systems is above 50,000, but the individual populations are not above 10,000?
Hey, Raven, I have a follow-up question to his question when he says Water and Sewer Authority runs the systems. Does the Water and Sewer Authority specifically treat the water? We do need to know that. And if not, the people who do that, the entities that do that, would need to be involved in that process.
Tyler, you still on the line with us?
Yes, I didn't know if I was allowed to talk, but I am figuring out the answer to your question right now.
Okay.
So I'll jump in here and just say that regardless of the answer to Corey's question, there's not enough information here to make that determination. The funding that is provided through EPA to the Department of Health for these source water protection grants specifically talks about populations of 10,000 persons and less. And that is what we're really responsible for sticking to with wellhead protection. We did reach out to EPA and justified a larger population for source water that wasn't wellhead, lakes, rivers, streams, other bodies of water. And they agreed to go up to 50,000 population for those services. And it gets kind of technical on how we handle that. One is wellhead protection versus capacity development. And we can handle larger populations through capacity development. So we would need to have a lot of specific information about the project to be able to evaluate that.
Raven, I think it would be helpful just to recap using that other question. How does a small community start the process? As an example, we're an office of one with one water operator and a small council. I think this applies to a lot of systems out there.
You're muted, Raven.
Sorry, my dogs are barking back here. I had to mute myself. So how does a small community start this process? You're an office of one with one water operator and a small council. You would start with the LAC, which is what our contractors would help you with. I'm not sure what Corey shared with you about the technical process, but that's where you would start, is figuring out who you're going to have on that committee, so you can know who's going to be making the decisions and walking through the source water assessment process and going through your protection measures that you'll be listing in your plan. Anybody else have anything to add on how to start? But you definitely will be starting with that local advisory committee and getting that together to start the process. But if we want to move one step before that process, is reaching out to either our technical division or one of our contractors to help you start that process as well. I was pulling up some of our questions from last year too, to kind of get us going if nobody else had any other questions as well.
And while you're doing that, I'm going to send out the link so that if folks want to get contact hours from the session, please use that link. It'll take you to a Microsoft form and we'll get that out to you. Back to you, Raven.
All right. So last year, somebody had asked if we could give an example of a protection measure. So I have a list jotted down. So some of the things we've seen and some of the things or projects we've seen in the past include well abandonment, well fencing. Educational outreach is a great one. Emergency response planning. I'll list a few more to kind of give you an idea of some of the projects that we've seen in the past and some things that will be eligible within our program. And if that sparks a question with anyone, just put that in the chat. We've seen installation of security monitoring systems. Those have been awards in the past. Retrofitting stormwater systems. Let's see. Conducting hydrological studies to identify protection strategies. So those are some that we've seen in the past, those projects that will be highly eligible for the grant program. So a question says, will this presentation be available for viewing later that you can share with your town council? Yes. Thanks, Julie.
Sorry, let me go back to that form and I'll unlock it.
Are there funds available for safe yield analysis / model or related work? Anybody want to take that question?
I'll try to take that question, Raven. And the answer is, it depends. It depends on whether the work is being done to comply with requirements or regulations from the Department of Health or the Department of Environmental Quality. If that's the case, then no, those funds are not available for that purpose. We cannot fund compliance if they're being done to inform decisions about how to protect your source water, and they're related to a local advisory committee's recommendations, then we can look at that and determine if that's something that we would fund.
All right, Linton says, I'm trying to replace a wastewater treatment plant. There we go. I blanked on what that was. That is, thank you, in jeopardy of failing. Is there an emergency fund / assistance available? And is this something we will fund? So trying to replace a wastewater treatment plant. I don't believe so.
So jumping in again, that would be a question for the Department of Environmental Quality. Clean Water Act is their funding source, and they should be able to help you with that question. I don't believe that they are geared for doing emergency funding either, but I'm not as familiar. But the person that you could reach out to is Kelly Ward at deq.virginia.gov. And that's Kelly, Kelly.
Scott, you had asked a question about, I'm so sorry. You asked a question about source water protection plans earlier. Remind me of your question again. I think I have it, but I don't want to answer the wrong question.
I've just kind of been randomly asked the question by various systems throughout the years if developing and implementing a source water protection plan will earn them, quote, brownie points with VDH or DEQ or other various entities.
So I guess the short answer is yes. I mean, that will always great to us to create a source water protection plan. As I said in my presentation, that's one of the steps to being eligible for the grant. So that's going to give you major brownie points if you want to be considered for the source water protection grant. So short answer, yes. We're always looking for source water protection plans, especially if you haven't created one, looking to update it. That's absolutely what we're looking for.
Okay. You muted yourself,
Sorry.
Raven.
Sorry. We have a budget of $120,000 that is to disperse among the awardees. So it changes each year, not the total amount that we have to work with, but depending on how many people apply, whether they actually qualify for funding. So a budget of $120,000. The average grant award, it really depends each year. I've seen so many different kinds. If I had to put an average, I'd say maybe 50,000. But it also depends on what project you are trying to fund, how detailed your plan is. But it definitely ranges. And Bob's also added that the grant is competitive. Anybody else?
Hey, Raven, I just wanted to swing back quickly to the previous comment from Scott. The question asking, does it give brownie points to do a source water protection plan? And just kind of touch a little bit on the importance of source water protection plan, even if some of your projects might exceed the amount for this grant program itself, like you have much larger projects. Like I mentioned, that management strategies being a crowbar to funding, it's not just for assistance. It is a requirement to apply for your grant program, but it's also been used by other systems in the past to gain funding through many other grant programs and be able to say, you know, we've planned it out and we have these projects in our active source water protection plan, but also I find that systems that go through the process and have a plan, especially when they're smaller or they have a ton of turnover, it works as a guide. Like Danny mentioned, when he came on, he read that document and realized that it was something of great importance and used it to really kind of guide how he managed his system after coming on. So whether or not you're eligible for that grant funding and whether or not you are going to apply to it with a small enough project, it's still very useful as a planning document and as a crowbar to other funding. For instance, the disaster programs through FEMA will often fund things like generators and stuff. And in their applications, some of the applications have points for if this is a management strategy and existing plan. And so you can look to that plan for that.
Absolutely. That's
Yeah,
a great point. Thank you.
Raven or Corey, have you all seen applications from the same water utility come back, a different application for different part of their source water plan in different years? Are they allowed to come back and ask for more money, in
Yes.
subsequent years?
Like Corey touched on, Purcellville has been killing it. They have been taking advantage of every opportunity for grant funding. Middleburg also, they have been like our top two for the last few years. So yes.
So you can break it into multiple applications over multiple years.
Absolutely. And kind of like Corey just said, if you do have a request that for one is even higher than the budget we have, that's when you can definitely apply for the next round and continue on with your scope of works.
Yeah, and you all have a great team there at VDH, because if it's not eligible for that, like Barry pointed out, some of those items might be more suited to DEQ. When they reach out to you all at VDH ODW, you all can provide them the resources for direct contacts for grants, low interest loans, all the different funding sources that might be more eligible and fitting for their projects. So it's a great team.
Yeah.
One question that I have heard in the past is, I know that the source water protection work is for community systems. Is it available to any public water system that is a community system, or do they have to be owned by a municipality?
Owned by a municipality. And
Is that for the
Bob, I wanna double
funding?
check.
Yeah.
For the grant or the funding? Which one are you asking?
Well, for the services to get a source water protection program started would be one question, and then eligibility for the funding would be a second question.
So for the funding, and I just want to pull up my notes to make sure I'm answering this correctly. So for funding, you just must be classified as a community waterworks, serve less than 50,000 people, and process water directly from a drinking water supply source. Just for funding assistance. And for the grant is grants are available to community waterworks, must utilize either ground or surface water sources, must have a source water protection plan, and must have an active local advisory committee.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. Bob also mentioned that we will award partial funding for a project, which leads to portfolio funding. So if we, for some reason, don't have the budget to cover fully, or we feel that part of your project is eligible, we will offer partial funding as well.
I have a question from some of my historical emails, because I know that Source Water Protection does not fund water distribution projects. Can any of you all give the entity that they should reach out to if they do have requests for water system, water distribution projects?
Corey, could you describe in a little more detail what you mean by a distribution system project?
Sure. I've got two immediately in mind. One system wanted to relocate. They have their chlorine stored along with their wellhead, and it is eating away at their wellhead. And they wanted to seek funding to move that chlorine out into another house, but they're a very small system. And I'll cover the second one after this.
Okay, so essentially, we're restricted from providing funding for anything that is operational. So that's why we really can't address those kinds of issues. However, those kinds of infrastructure improvements or infrastructure replacements can be funded by the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, which is a program from one of our other divisions, our financial capacity assistance program, and they will provide either loan or grants for infrastructure improvement.
Okay, thank you, Barry. And who is the best, or what is the best way to reach out to that division to get their project on the radar?
The director for that division is Anthony Hess, and that would be Anthony Hess at vdh.virginia.gov.
Okay. And then also the second system that we have in mind recently replaced all of their water mains in the town, but then they have some laterals and some other water systems due to just extreme water leakage that they're interested in funding those additional laterals. Would that be the same, Anthony Hess?
Yeah, that would be
Okay.
the same. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I have a lot of folks who contact us wanting distribution network solutions.
Yeah, and just so that you and everyone else on the call understands, so my division exists solely to provide connection of resources to needs. And so if you have any questions that either seem like they're not directly source water related or they're peripherally source water related and you need some assistance, please feel free to reach out to me and I'll get you to the right resources and the right people to help with those questions. And I can throw my email address up into chat.
All right, with that, we have hit noon. I would like to thank everybody for joining us. If you have any additional questions, send them on to Raven. You should have her email address in your email, and y'all have a great rest of the day.